This is an MJA Inc. Investigations warning. This MJA podcast is rated E for explicit. Some details of a case and language used on this podcast might be upsetting to some of our listeners. Listeners' discretion is advised. And for those who are still with us, kick back and enjoy the show. Welcome to our MJ podcast. This series, Deep into the Woods, Episode 12, Part 5, 6 Missing Person Cases from the state of Minnesota. On tonight's show, we will profile 6 missing person cases. There will be 3 missing males profiled and 3 missing females profiled. On the Doe Network, they have 50 males listed as missing from the state of Minnesota. On the Doe Network, they have 40 females listed as missing from the state of Minnesota. My name is Mark, and I will be your host for tonight's show. Joining me later will be our amazing co-host, Olivia. We are coming to you from Hudson, Florida, located on the Gulf of Mexico. Welcome to Minnesota. Case 1. Missing. Kevin Lee Ellsworth, a 18-year-old white male, vanished without a trace on July 11, 1982, from International Falls, Minnesota. Case 2. Missing. Cindy Mae Brown, a 22-year-old white female, went missing on July 29, 1980, from Roseville, Minnesota. Case 3. Missing. Nathan Andrew Edberg, a 21-year-old white male, went missing on April 19, 1999, from White Bear Lake, Minnesota. Case 4. Missing: Carla Beth Anderson, a 23-year-old white female, vanished without a trace on November 13th, 1987 from Wadena, Minnesota. Case 5. Missing: John Patrick Morrissey, a 62-year-old white male, went missing on July 14, 1999 from International Falls, Minnesota. Case 6. Missing: Linda Jean Anger, a 40-year-old white female, vanished without a trace on May 7, 1993 from Rochester or Byron, Minnesota. Before we get to our podcast, we would like to update you on the 1965 abduction of Elizabeth Ann Gill. Elizabeth Ann Gill was 2 years and 10 months old when she was abducted. We have highly circumstantial evidence that Beth Ann Gill was abducted on June 13, 1965 by a group of gypsies. Yes, I said gypsies, who were staying in a motel right behind the Gill family home in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Red flags: on 2 occasions, Gill family members had seen female members of the group of the gypsies try to coax Beth from the yard prior to her disappearance. 2 maids at the motel witnessed one of the female gypsies on the side of the building trying to coax little Beth Ann out of her backyard. One maid commented to the other, "Is that woman trying to take that girl?" A local car dealer told police of a couple staying at the motel behind the child's home who had ordered and paid for a part for a 1965 Chevy truck. The part was not due to be there until Monday. The couple stated that would not be a problem as they were in town for another week. When Monday arrived, the car dealer called the motel and was told the couple had checked out the day before, around the time that little Beth Ann disappeared. Due to records kept by Martha Gill Hamilton, who is Beth Ann's older sister, and all the research Martha and MJA has done on this gypsy clan, we are positive that little Beth Ann Gill was abducted by this group. That's why it's highly possible, if this gypsy clan took little Beth, she is alive and doesn't have a clue to who she really is because she was abducted at such a young age. It's highly possible that little Beth Ann was abducted to be part of an arranged marriage in her early teens. That's big money in the gypsy clans. In 2010, a possible relative of the couple staying at the motel was located. When investigators interviewed the elderly lady, she was reluctant to talk. She mentioned that 2 of her family members had been involved in the investigation. She was told by a relative and his wife that they had been held and questioned by police. No record could be found indicating the couple was ever questioned. The info that Martha Hamilton had and what MJA had learned, it produced some leads. I was involved in talks with some of the gypsy family clans in Indiana and Michigan areas. But all it produced was riddles, and I had to do things to prove I was acting in good faith. I had to track down a former gypsy family member who became a ghost in 1968 at 15 years old. This ex-member was causing the gypsies legal trouble and turning the gypsy family clan's stash of money buried in the woods. It was rumored that the $300,000 found in the Catskills, New York by park rangers was gypsy money planted by the ghost to be found. It is also rumored that the $275,000 in silver belonged to the gypsies that was found buried in Indiana during a dig for a missing person was also planted by the ghost. If so, the person who produced the tip to look for the remains of a missing person was just twisted and sick. But it got the ghost results. The silver was found. MJA did track down the ghost, but we refused to turn that info over until the gypsies act in good faith. Still, we wait for answers from the gypsies. We need an act of good faith. As of June 3rd, 2023, we learned one of our gypsy contacts had lied about his involvement in the case. He is the one who made all the riddles. But we have gained public record info that he is more connected to these gypsy family clans that he had led us to believe. We have gained info about a married couple where we were given their names years ago. Come to find out, the husband had changed his name to get away from the gypsy clan that's involved in our investigation. At this time, we are very excited for these turn of events, and we are just praying for answers. MJA has let it be known to the gypsy family clans that there is a large reward being offered to them if they produce the correct info needed. In my way of thinking, we have to appeal to the state or to the Department of Justice to treat these gypsy family clans as a criminal enterprise because of all their scams. It could be done if someone would just show the interest in doing so. Arrest and conviction costs money. If you start putting pressure on them and start costing them money, they might pay attention. In my way of thinking, I had to put together a file for the state of Missouri and for the Department of Justice. We do know most of the gypsy family clan strongholds in Indiana, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. We also know a lot of their travel routes and the towns where they pull their scams. At this time, Martha Hamilton and MJA are still following all possible leads in the 1965 abduction of Elizabeth and Gill. Let's take a pause for the cause, and when we return, Olivia will be on the line. Be back in a moment. Welcome to our MJA podcast, the series, Deep into the Woods. This is episode 12, part 5, 6 missing person cases. We have Olivia on the line. How are you doing tonight?
Doing well. A little under the weather, but fighting it. So if I sound croaky when I'm talking, it's just the cold.
Okay, let's dig into these unsolved mysteries.
Okay.
Welcome to Minnesota. Case 1. 18-year-old Kevin Lee Ellsworth was last seen on the evening of July 11, 1982 in International Falls, Minnesota. Earlier in the evening, Ellsworth was involved in a disruption at the local Union Hall. This was after Ellsworth and his friends crashed a wedding reception there. The 18-year-old Ellsworth had used a false identification under the name of Dale Anderson to buy beer for himself. A witness reported seeing Ellsworth leaving the hall headed towards the bowling alley at 2:30 a.m. The 18-year-old Ellsworth reportedly said, "Anybody who stays around here is going to jail. Come with me to heaven." Ellsworth had done some janitorial work for his father at the Rex Hotel in International Falls and had a key to the building. The hotel was abandoned at the time, but Ellsworth may have been sleeping in the basement room in the hotel. The 18-year-old Ellsworth was aware that a cot was still down in the basement. The building caught fire and burned to the ground on July 11, 1982. Kevin Lee Ellsworth's remains were not found in the rubble, but the car he had been seen using was found parked across the street from the hotel. A key to the hotel was found nearby, but it is unknown whether it was Ellsworth's. One witness says she saw 18-year-old Ellsworth walking in International Falls after the fire, but this has not been confirmed. The 18-year-old Kevin Lee Ellsworth has never been heard from again. Ellsworth has ties to Kelso, Washington, where his family members live and where he grew up. The 18-year-old Ellsworth also may have been sighted around the time of his disappearance, but this hasn't been confirmed either. The Kevin Lee Ellsworth case remains unsolved. If you have any info concerning this case, please call the International Falls Police Department at 218-283-4416.
Case 2. On July 29, 1980, 22-year-old Cindy Mae Brown vanished without a trace from Rossville, Minnesota. 22-year-old Brown was last seen in Rossville, Minnesota on March 10, 1980. Cindy Brown told the supervisor at Kmart that she was leaving town. 22-year-old Cindy Brown has never been heard from again. Brown's roommate, Patrick Thomas Walsh, told police she'd left for California in a brown van with a woman and 2 men leaving her own car behind. At the time, law enforcement believed that Cindy Brown had left at her own accord. 22-year-old Brown wasn't reported missing until July 29, 1980. This was 4.5 months after Cindy Brown was last seen. Cindy Brown lived on Rice Street in Rossville at the time of her disappearance. Brown's roommate, Patrick Thomas Walsh, had an extensive criminal record as a teenager. Walsh had previously spent time in St. Peter Hospital after being found not guilty by reason of insanity in the attempted murder of a 23-year-old woman. Walsh was released in 1977, 3 years before Brown's disappearance. Doctors at the hospital stated he had an antisocial personality but wasn't mentally ill. In 1984, another female acquaintance of Walsh's was found stabbed to death. In 1991, Walsh was charged with murdering a female coworker, Pamela Susan Sweeney. He was found guilty of murder, burglary, and sexual assault in that case. Patrick Thomas Walsh is considered a possible suspect in a 1991 murder and in the 1980 Cindy Brown missing person case. The Brown case has been reclassified as possible homicide. The 22-year-old Cindy Brown has never been located. If you have any information concerning this case, please call the Rossville Police Department Detective Jamie Baker at 651-792-7008.
Case 3. On April 14, 1999, 21-year-old Nathan Andrew Edberg vanished without a trace from White Bear Lake, Minnesota. The night of his disappearance, Nathan Edberg went to the police reserves at White Bear Lake Police Department. The 21-year-old Edberg was considering a career in law enforcement. Later that night, Edberg stopped at a bar called Decoy's Bar and Grill for a couple of drinks with old friends in St. Paul, Minnesota. The bartender at Decoy's told authorities that Edberg was a regular customer at the bar and grill. He said that Edberg arrived at approximately 7:30 p.m. on that night of his disappearance and ordered a beer. The bartender stated that Edberg seemed to be happier than he had been in previous visits. Edberg was last seen leaving Decoy's Bar and Grill on 4th Street in White Bear Lake, Minnesota on April 14, 1999. Witnesses at the bar did not recall the exact time when the 21-year-old Edberg departed. Nathan Andrew Edberg's vehicle was located in a ditch on Highway 35 East and Highway 694. It appeared that Edberg tried to get the car out of the ditch but damaged the wheels. Law enforcement aren't sure if the 21-year-old Edberg was picked up by someone or he wandered away. It is unclear if Edberg was hurt in the accident. The vehicle was last seen hours later by his friends as they were driving in the area. The state patrol told it his vehicle that night. There was no sign of Edberg at the scene and no evidence of foul play, but there was a few footprints heading east. Law enforcement said it appeared as though Edberg had missed the turn on the highway and ended up driving into the ditch. The 21-year-old Edberg has never been heard from again. The 21-year-old Nathan Edberg apparently left his wallet at the bar, so he probably wasn't carrying any identification when he vanished. Edberg did not show up for a job he was supposed to start, and he didn't keep a medical appointment. Nathan Edberg was planning to attend college after taking a year off. The 21-year-old Edberg was starting to seek treatment for depression, seeking to return to school to change his outlook on life. It was reported that Edberg was depressed following a breakup with his girlfriend and his parents' pending divorce. The 21-year-old Edberg had also lost his job. Law enforcement were not told about the disappearance until almost 5 days after Edberg's truck was found. Nathan Edberg was living with his cousin in St. Paul, Minnesota. When his mother didn't hear from him for several days, she and the rest of the family just thought he wanted to be alone. Nathan Edberg's father died in 2001, but his mother is still alive and still searching for him. Nathan Edberg's case remains unsolved. Foul play is suspected. But relatives say it would be unusual for Nathan Edberg to take off without notifying his family. There has been no activity on his credit card or bank accounts. 21-year-old Nathan Edberg is still missing. If you have any info concerning this case, please call the Ramsey County Sheriff's Department at 651-266-7320. Let's take a pause for the cause, and when we return, we will profile 3 more missing person cases. Be back in a moment. Welcome back to our MJ podcast, the series Deep into the Woods. This is episode 12, part 5, 6 missing person cases.
Case 4. On November 13th, 1987, 23-year-old Carla Beth Anderson vanished without a trace from Wadena, Minnesota. At the time of her disappearance, Carla had just learned that she would be named the Employee of the Month at her job at Hardee's. That night, 23-year-old Carla went out to eat with her mother and stepfather to celebrate. They ate at Taco John's and stopped on the way back to Carla's apartment to pick up a couple of movies she planned to watch that night. Her parents dropped Carla off that Friday night and made plans to have Carla come to the cabin the family was building on Sunday to help stain some wood. In return, her mother was going to do Carla's hair so it would look nice Monday morning for her Employee of the Month photo. Parents dropped Carla off around 7:30 or 8 p.m. that night at her apartment at Greenwood Apartments in Wadena. 23-year-old Carla Anderson has never been seen again. Nothing was disturbed in Anderson's apartment, and only her keys were missing. Anderson's purse was still there. The 23-year-old Carla's brown and orange Hardy jacket was also missing from the apartment. Carla's door was locked from the outside. A fire burned on the edge of town that night. That fire would have been visible from her apartment on the northwest side of the building. One theory is Carla may have grabbed the jacket and keys and walked down to observe the fire up close. Maybe from there, someone could have abducted Carla Anderson. Another incident that night involved the theft of a car from the neighborhood where Carla lived. A brown Plymouth Horizon was stolen a couple blocks from Greenwood Apartments. That vehicle has never been located. The police followed every tip related to the case. A search committee went out looking to find Carla. A WCCO helicopter was used to search from the air. It was deer hunting weekend when Carla disappeared, and hunters were alerted to be on the lookout for the 23-year-old Carla Anderson. Carla's parents think someone Carla was acquainted with came to the apartment and convinced her to leave with them. The parents remember two boys who would harass Carla, knocking on her apartment door and windows from the outside. Anderson's parents did not know Carla was missing until Monday. It was 3 days later when she failed to show up for work. The whole family took polygraph tests, which they passed. The boyfriend was also questioned and cleared. Foul play is suspected. If you have any info on this case, please call Wadena Police Department Chief Naomi Clouts at 218-631-7700.
Case 5. On July 14, 1999, 62-year-old John Patrick Morrissey went missing from International Falls, Minnesota. John Morrissey was last spotted 2 miles south of Marjorie, Minnesota on US 71 at around 1 a.m. This is about 45 minutes southwest of International Falls in northern Minnesota. A sheriff's deputy had been dispatched to check on Morrissey. Some residents in the area reported that a man was sitting suspiciously in his car on the side of the road. When the deputy arrived, the 16-year-old Morrissey refused any assistance. Morrissey told the deputy that his 1985 vehicle had broken down before and would start again if he just waited for a while. So Morrissey refused to let the deputy call a tow truck. The 62-year-old Morrissey wasn't acting strangely during the conversation with the deputy, so the officer moved on. The officer returned a couple hours later, and the man was gone. Morrissey had left his personal belongings and 2 dogs in the car. It's uncharacteristic of him to abandon his dogs. Morrissey was last seen walking down the center of the road at 1:15 a.m. A motorist saw him and had to swerve to avoid hitting him. The motorist said Morrissey walked right at the car as if he wanted to be hit. The 62-year-old Morrissey has never been heard from again, and a search of the area turned up no sign of him. Morrissey may have hitched a ride out of the area. Morrissey worked in the construction industry and taught carpentry at the St. Paul's Technical Institute for 21 years. He was an active member of the Democratic Party and the Knights of Columbus. The family of the 62-year-old Morrissey believes he may be dead. Morrissey's case remains unsolved. The 62-year-old left behind a wife and 6 children. If you have any info concerning this case, please call the Comanche County Sheriff's Department at 218-283-4416.
Case 6. On May 7th, 1993, 40-year-old Linda Jean Anger vanished without a trace from Rochester or Byron, Minnesota. Linda was last seen at around 7:30 a.m. on May 7th, 1993. Anger's children reported that she was inside their family's residence in rural Rochester at the time. Her ex-husband, Dennis Anger, said he dropped her off for a scheduled appointment with social services at the Olmsted County Courthouse at 8 a.m. It is unclear whether Anger did, in fact, have an appointment, and no one saw her either inside the building or in the parking lot. 40-year-old Linda Anger has never been heard from again. At the time of Linda's disappearance, Linda Anger was living with her ex-husband, Dennis, with the 2 young sons and his new wife. Weird. 40-year-old Linda Anger had recently moved there from Arizona. Linda Anger was dedicated to her children and hoped to find a residence of her own. She had never mentioned wanting to leave the area or wanting to harm herself. Linda's ex-husband, Dennis, is considered a person of interest in Linda's case. Within 3 days of her disappearance, Dennis and his wife had cleaned out Linda's bedroom at their home. At least one of Linda's sons believes his father had something to do with his mother's disappearance, but Dennis died in 2007 without having even been charged in his ex-wife's case. Investigators believe 40-year-old Linda Anger may have been the victim of a homicide. Her disappearance remains unsolved. If you have any info concerning this case, please call the Olmsted County Sheriff's Department Sergeant Lee Rossman at 507-328-6842 or 507-328-6800.
And Olivia, is there anything you would like to add to these cases?
Yes, 2 words. Serial killers. Are there any in Minnesota?
Well, I noticed there was 2 cases there in International Falls, and so that kind of...
You know who I'm thinking of?
Oh, you're thinking of...
yeah, because there's people, they think there's more. Didn't he have kids up in Minnesota?
Oh, I don't know.
You see, those are areas that, you have to watch that show I watched. They showed a map of where all those kits were, and I think some of them were up in the, that's the Midwest considered, right, Minnesota?
Yeah, Midwestern area, yeah.
There's like some states that I personally would never venture to just because, I'm sure they're pretty states, but I don't know. Places like that, they frighten me. There's just, I'm a person that goes to New Hampshire, but I don't know. There's just too much wilderness, too much, I don't know. They just seem creepy. It's very cold. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's like perfect grounds for a serial killer because it's isolated. I mean, who is out? Doesn't it get like below 0 there? Really, really, really bitter cold?
Yeah, oh yeah.
I mean, that's perfect. If somebody's stranded, you're looking to kill somebody, there you go, Yeah. So what do you think?
Yeah, like I said, with the 2 cases being from International Falls, but I didn't find none other than those 2 from the same town, but there's other towns around it though. So
yeah, there were serial killers. There was a really bad one, but I think he's passed on. I was looking this up before. Paul Michael Stefani, but I think he's passed.
I believe he has, yes.
But there were serial killers up there, and then our good old buddy Israel. I always think of him. I don't know why, but my friend and I were talking about him before, and it's just you really, if you look at anything about him, he was shrewd. He was a shrewd killer. And you really don't know how many people he did kill because he died before. I think there's more than 11.
Oh,
he was at this a long time, and he said he enjoyed it. He enjoyed it, So, and this would be the perfect place for him because he's from Alaska and he's used to that kind of weather.
Yeah.
Seems like he likes the colder climates,
Yes. Yeah.
But that's my thoughts on that.
Okay. I want to thank Olivia for being on the show tonight. A special thanks to our viewers and listeners, for y'all have been so kind. I have a quote for you all. If you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything. Mark Twain. Always remember, folks, that if you ever get bored with nothing to do, well, take a walk deep into the woods. You might be surprised at what you might find. That's the end of our MJA podcast. This has been episode 12, part 5, 6 missing person cases. We say to all of you, good night from Hudson, Florida.
Don't want them to know where you've been again. Don't tell your friend anything. Caught in the clouds, want to leave here and on now. Float from the ground, out of the body, believing all we found. Floating ghost light through the atmosphere, like spirit vines, crawling deep through the underskin. Things will change.